let me take what you're suggesting, that there is a clear attempt on the part of Washington, in a sense, to recognize China as a principal threat to regional peace and security in the region, in the Pacific region in particular. Christine Fair, do you believe this is driven by Mr. Trump, by President Trump, or is this a bipartisan consensus now on Capitol Hill? And that is where India fits in, that India is now seen as a strategic ally in the encircling of China.
So first of all, I think we need to disentangle the two questions that you've asked me. With respect to the U.S.-India relationship and the importance that is given to India in any strategy to manage China's rise, India has long been accorded that importance. This relationship has been thoroughly instituted within the bureaucracy. Mm-hmm. And it really began with Bill Clinton, right? So we have now had it began with Bill Clinton in about 2000, well before 9/11. So this relationship, it's been thoroughly institutionalized. It is highly regarded within the State Department, within the Pentagon, even within the intelligence community, right? So irrespective of who wins the election and what wins means, I don't expect there to be any significant shift. I actually do not view the Trump administration's handling of the India relationship terribly well. And I don't view his position on China to be terribly systematic. In fact, what Trump has done on the economic side has largely punished Americans, right? He fundamentally misunderstands tariffs. He fundamentally misunderstands who pays for tariffs. Mm-hmm. So what some people are calling his economic hardball with China has actually punished middle American farmers who have difficulty selling their soybeans to China. And so to shore up that vote, he's also had to essentially bribe them, right, to pay them for their losses. The other problem with President Trump, we often speak of him as being deeply compromised for reasons we don't entirely understand, because he's been very resistant and he has fought tooth and nail to not reveal his taxes. But what we have learned is he's also deeply compromised by China. The American taxpayer had to learn that while he paid a meager $70 to the U.S. government, he has paid much, much more to the Chinese in taxes. So I don't... he is a deeply compromised person. No, so much of what he has sought from China has been trade deals for his children. Right? So I don't see him as being helpful to India in any regard.
No, this comes at a time when Mike Pompeo comes to India and says that the Chinese Communist Party is no friend to democracy. Do you believe, therefore, that it's very clear in that sense that is this a double game that the United States plays with China? That at one level you will come to India and say that, you know, we share your concern with Chinese expansionism, and at the same time recognize the need for greater economic or closer economic ties with China?
No, I think you're misunderstanding the problem set, right? It costs Pompeo nothing to come to India and say what we all know to be true, right? That the Chinese Party, the Chinese Communist Party, is no friend of democracy. It would take an imbecile, frankly, to say anything other than that. But if you actually look at what the U.S. government has done with respect to China, you'll actually see it's done very little. And I think part of the problem, quite frankly, is that the United States has really neglected defense modernization. The United States, and this also happened during Obama's period, there's been very little to push back on the Chinese adventurism in the South China Sea. The United States has been pretty silent about the efforts of the Chinese to revise territorial dispensation with India, and it has done nothing on the genocide of the Uyghurs, right? And of course, once Trump came into office, there's been virtual silence on what's happened in Myanmar, which is happening with Chinese complicity. So it is not driven by a need to manage China while also recognizing Chinese economic independence. It's really to say the right things to India, but actually do nothing. And what so much of what this administration does is not driven by national security interests, but rather personal and familial financial interests. And I think so. This is, I think, a very big difference between the Trump administration and what we might expect from a Biden administration.
That's interesting.